Chapter 5 Phone System. Only two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the former. Albert Einstein. Real-time voice communication. As an enterprise session border controller for voice communication, the system is facing to the IMS, IP multimedia subsystem, of an ISP with SIP trunk on one side. The other side is to connect with multiple VoIP-enabled devices. We will talk about how to use SIP trunk to connect with IMS or other SIP servers later. But at first, we will focus on how to let the VoIP-enabled devices, hardware SIP phones or software phones, to connect with the server itself. The system also supports video calling in some scenarios. But we just focus on voice at this moment. There are many protocols involved with voice communication. We just briefly mention some of them. This phone system can be used without any other plug-in cards, FXO, FXS, T1/E1/J1, for pure VoIP, voice over IP, application. To interface with other legacy PBX or analog phones, it needs other interface cards unless that equipment is also provided with communication methods via Ethernet interfaces. For simplicity, we just identify those phones by the communications protocols. For instance, for those phones running SIP, Session Initialization Protocol, we call them SIP phones. Those phones running IAX protocol are called IAX phones no matter they are software or hardware phones. SIP is a protocol developed by IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, IAX, Inter**Exchange. Protocol is initially developed by an open-source PBX server *. Usually when we go by the name IAX, actually we mean IAX2 because the original version of IAX protocol was deprecated. We will use the term SIP phones or IAX phones in this document to represent those end-user devices or programs. Many vendors are providing hardware SIP phones. Thus, it is easier to have SIP phones standby online all the time instead of using PCs. But deploying a SIP server behind a firewall with NAT is with some problems. SIP uses UDP port 5060 for establishing initial connection, and this can be overcome via port forwarding if it is behind a firewall. Usually it uses UDP ports 8000 to 30000 for RTP, real-time transmission protocol, streams for voice. In our setting, we use UDP ports from 10,000 to 20,000 by default. So, usually you only can use full NAT by exposing that server to the network outside firewall instead of just opening a few ports. Deploying SIP server behind a firewall needs some adjustment that is not currently provided on web user interface. And we do not recommend this configuration. Even if you deploy SIP server on the same machine with firewall, we still do not recommend that you open SIP access to the public network unless you really need inbound connection from the public network side. In azblink border controller, it is equipped with SIP connection tracking mechanism so that it only needs to open UDP port 5060, the RTP ports will be handled automatically by the firewall along with SIP connection. Instead, it only needs to open UDP port 4569 for IAX phones while connecting from the network outside firewall. Please keep this firewall issue in mind. Before we get into more details, we start with the basic topology for establishing a phone system network. The diagram below is very simple configuration. SW is the voice communication server and several phone client programs are connecting to SW so that they can call each other if the system is properly configured. SWBA FOFO NENE SW1 SW2 DACB. For example, if the extension number of A is 7111 and B is 7112, user ETA can dial 7112 to reach user at B. A and B are connecting to the same server SW. If B is not answering the phone, you will have choice to do some configuration at SW to allow A to leave messages to be consider the case that you might want to reach the users on another server. Thus, the following scheme might be considered to use. In the diagram below, SW1 and SW2 are voice servers. A, B, C, D are phone clients where A and B are connecting to SW1, C and D are connecting to SW2. Since each server can be configured independently, at SW1, you might have extension number of A, 7111 extension number of B, 7112 similarly, on SW2, you also can have extension number of C, 7111 extension number of D, 7112. The two systems SW1 and SW2 are working independently initially so that it can dial 7112 to reach B at SW1 whereas C can also dial 7112 to reach D at SW2. But there is demand that A at SW1 wants to reach D at SW2. At this moment, the links between SW1 and SW2 need to be established so that phone calls from SW1 can reach SW2 and phone calls from SW2 can reach SW1 like the following diagram indicated. At SW1, it can be configured that 371 needs to be dialed at first if you want to reach SW2. Thus, for user A, if 7112 is dialed, user B will be reached. If 371-7112 is dialed, user D will be reached. Similarly at SW2, you can have similar dial plan by specifying which digits need to be dialed at first to reach the other server. Of course, it is necessary that SW1 and SW2 should allow the calls from other server to come in by releasing some authentication methods. We will introduce how to do that via our web GUI. At this moment, we only focus on thinking how to do planning. In the diagram above, if SW1 and SW2 belong to different companies, it is okay that each of them can have different dial plans. But if they belong to the same company, it is necessary to have a global consistent dial plan so that it is easier to tell the users about which number to dial. The following diagram is that we complicate the scenario by introducing more voice servers. On each node of SW1, SW2, SW3, and SW4, it has its own plan to dial to the other servers directly. The red link arrow in the diagram stands for one can place the calls toward another. Sometimes, it is unavoidable to have configuration like this if SW1, SW2, SW3, and SW4 are under the administration of different people across different companies. But inside the same company, you probably should consider the following diagram by using hierarchy structure. SW0 controls where to route the placed calls to the destination server, and all the other servers just forward the calls to SW0 if the phone calls are not destined to where they are originated. But the drawback is, if SW0 fails, none of the phone calls can be across the servers. Those things shall be considered clearly if you are dealing with a large amount of users. Voice communication is different from email. It is almost real-time application so that it is easily subject to the processing power of CPUs or bandwidth of the network. And it is somewhat involved with the dial plan to avoid that the users need to dial very long digits to reach the others. SW1, SW2, DACB, SW3, SW4, SW1, SW2, FO, any. SW0, SW1, SW2, SW3, SW4, FO, any. Dial plan. We start with simple configuration via web GUI by navigating phone basic dial plan. Currently, we support two kinds of phones, SIP phone and IAX phone. We assign a class of numbers to associate with each kind of phones for easy management. For example, pattern for SIP phones, _68XX pattern for IAX phones, _67XX. It means, if you are using SIP phones to connect to the voice server, the extension number should be like 6823 or 6834 for the other people to call you on the same server. If you are using IAX phone, the extension number shall be assigned as 6745 or 6722. X stands for the digits 0 to 9. For pattern to dial, it always should start with __. And we currently only allow numbers as identifiers for extension to be in sync with traditional telephone keypads. To specify patterns, you can use the following symbols. X stands for 0 to 9N, 2 to 9Z, 1 to 9, and remember pattern should start with _. Thus, _6XXX means any number from 6000 to 6999. _7XXX means any number from 7000 to 7999. Similarly, pattern for conference, _9XXX number for voicemail, 8500 number for directory, 8900 echo test, 600. _9XXX means any number from 9000 to 9999. This system allows people to attend teleconference by dialing a special extension number with associating PIN number. For those conference dial-in numbers for the other people to call, in this example, it is of the pattern _9XXX. For voicemail, people can just dial 8500. And for directory assistance, dial 8900 and it will ask you to input the last name of the people you are looking for via traditional telephone keypads with ABC pressing 2, DEF pressing 3, PQRS pressing 7, TUV pressing 8, WXYZ pressing 9. Echo test is the number you can dial so that you can check the round-trip time to / from the voice server by speaking some words. This forms core dial plan of the system. There are 3 layers of dialing plans in the system: default, middle, and all. The layers of the dialing plans are made for classifying the phone user accounts. If a phone user account belongs to default, then the account can only access the dialing rules in the layer default. The layers are with the following relationships: all contains everything in middle, middle contains everything in default. Dialing rules being set in the screen belong to the layer default, and they can be adjusted from the configuration screen. Phone cascade context management. And please remember, when you make changes on the system setting, you have to restart VoIP process by shutting it down and bringing it up again to have those changes take into effect. Extension account setting. How to create an account for IAX phone or SIP phone. In the previous screen phone basic dial plan, we put pattern for SIP phones, _68XX pattern for IAX phones, _67XX. This means number used by IAX phones shall be _67XX. Thus, In Phone Basic Extension account, IAX phone or SIP phone will be displayed and the details on each account can be obtained there. To add account for SIP phone or IAX phone, use Phone Basic Add Extension account. And edit it via Phone Basic Extension account. Although the screen layouts look different, they are dealing with the same things. In the screen, it has two types of phones for selection, IAX and SIP. For example, when you select IAX phone account to add, and enter extension number, 6723 password, hello, this means, on your IAX phone client, you should enter 6723 as login with password hello so that it will be allowed to connect to voice server and its extension number will be identified as 6723. So, people can dial 6723 to ring that IAX phone and people at that IAX phone can dial any valid extension. But if you just do the things mentioned above on the extension 6723, this extension does not have voicemail associated with it to let people leave messages.